the longer you go with your water broken, the higher chance of infection in the uterus. And that infection isn't necessarily you're having that infection and you're going to have symptoms from it, but the one that it's really affecting is the baby.
Safe and warm, you're never really alone. You're never really alone. Welcome to the Postpartum Podcast, the show for new moms in the thick of it, moms to be, and women thinking about motherhood who want the real story and not just the highlight reel. Today's guest brings an incredibly unique perspective. Tamara is a labor and delivery nurse with a deep passion for the L&D operating room. She helps women through childbirth every single day. But right now, she's navigating the other side of the bed as a mom-to-be who has faced her own significant hurdles in this pregnancy. So, Tamara, I'm really excited that you're here. So Tamara and I
Thanks
met.
For having me.
You're welcome. We met in nursing school. So before the scrubs and before the baby, we were in it together.
Oh yeah.
So can you just tell me what made you pick L&D and what brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I think I initially went to nursing school being surprised about wanting to become a nurse. I never thought healthcare was for me. And, you know, my second time around for school, I was like, wow, okay, maybe this is what I want to do. And it was very like either I wanted to do NICU or women's healthcare and in that general direction. And I had my first labor and delivery clinical. My first delivery was like an hour and a half into the day, and I walked out of that room and like that day, and I was like, this is what I want to do. And obviously, like things change, and you're doing it now. I'm like, oh wow, okay, there's so many things I could do with this. But then it was definitely like I was like, this is what I want to do. I love this, and I still do. I mean, love it.
And I mean, you've taken a little hiatus. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you're now growing this little baby. Mm-hmm. But before we get into that, I know that you do have a pretty big passion for the operating room.
Yeah.
So tell me about that whole experience and like what made you be so passionate about it.
Yeah, I think, we usually end up there one of two ways. It was either planned or it wasn't planned. There's kind of no, in between of that. You have one or the other. And I'm usually, because I work nights, on the not planned side of it, and we're going from either we need to get this done, or this is urgent, or this is an emergency kind of situation. It's usually one of those options, but it usually is something that needs to be done. And I feel like I thrive in chaos a little bit. And I think that is just something that I just never imagined that I would enjoy. Because
it's a really scary moment for a lot of women.
For a lot of people. And I think, and it's even for nurses, it's kind of like you either love it and you thrive, which I think a lot of L&D, because it is so different than regular labor and delivery, like are not the biggest fans of it. And I enjoy like the controlled chaos of it in some ways. It's not always the same, but there is steps to it, and we go in a certain order, and and I think seeing
like to
life come out and just in that way is so different than quote unquote normal way, you know what I mean? And so I think it's just and so I think it's just something that I enjoy. And I think everybody in that room knows the severity of what's going on, but we're all there for the best outcome. And I think it's in a situation where, to me, it feels like everybody's senses are kind of just really heightened. And I think we're all just kind of like, a part of the time of waiting is a bunch of us are just waiting for that baby to come out. And we're like kind of like in a standstill. And it's kind of like I don't know, I want to say like NASCAR F1 where you see like the lights going off and then it's like the pause right before that like green light, and it's kind of like that build up, a lot of adrenaline, so maybe a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, so it's just kind of that moment and stuff like that, but it's enjoyable. And I understand how scary it can be, But I think people don't realize that their faces when baby does come out is they're just as happy. Like, I think people don't realize that. Like, from my side and my point of view and seeing parents' faces of...
It's the same.
It's the same.
Hey mamas, it's Sami. If you're listening to this and you're feeling alone, please continue to follow along. I record these podcasts every week because I'm passionate about getting you the right information. Whether it's navigating pregnancy or being in the thick of those younger years, we all need the right information. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that knowledge alone isn't enough. It can't hold your hand at 3 a.m., and it can't tell you I've been there too when things get messy. And for that, we need community. That's exactly why I created the Postpartum Podcast Facebook group. It's the place where the information we talk about becomes real-life support. And it's where you'll find your community events, local meetups, and a village of women navigating these exact same highs and lows as you. So don't do this alone. Search for the Postpartum Podcast community on Facebook or click the link in my bio. I'll see you there, mamas. You've got this. You're never really alone. You're never really alone. I'm sure that also comes with you being their nurse, though. Like, there must be some things that you do or say to help that disappointment that they feel, that they're going into the C-section that they didn't plan. And you create an atmosphere that makes them more excited. And like, what do you do to kind of help change their mindset and get them on like a better, like, understanding that this is still going to be an amazing experience?
Yeah, I think, I think I see a lot of that disappointment comes from, it's hard when you want something so badly one way and it's not working out that way.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, it's not something like we planned for.
Of course.
And I wish it was. Sometimes I wish we were like, hey, if you're having a kid, this is always a possibility that this might happen to you, unfortunately, instead of like, this is zero possibility that this will happen to you.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not the outcome we usually want, but, healthy baby, healthy mom kind of is, what we want as the medical side of it, we want you to have your experience, but we also want healthy baby, healthy mom. And sometimes it's just reminding people that there's nothing,
This
once
is just the way that it's gonna go. That's how the cookie crumbles.
It's releasing that control. As soon as you are, I would say even before, as soon as you are pregnant, I wish I could explain to people how, and now fully understanding it on my side, pretty much, I haven't been through the full thing, but understanding a lot more how much, like, yes, there's certain things you can control, but so much of it is just out of your control. And the quicker you can get to peace with that of like, hey, and I always...
You're not in the driver's seat anymore.
You're not in the... And 100%. And so many times I always joke that it's baby. And I always tell them, I'm like, they're just being stubborn in there. Like, there's nothing I could... And sometimes I'm like, you've done everything correctly. And sometimes it's just reminding people of that. Reminding them also that we wanted what they wanted, especially if it is that vaginal birth or and everything like that. And that... reminding them that they didn't do anything wrong, and that, but also, sometimes having to like put down your nurse guard a little bit and be like a human with them and be like, hey, like, this is what I'm saying. I don't, kind of.
Like, I'm not just trying to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not just trying to, like, push medical advice on you and push this stuff that I don't believe in. Like, I believe in this. Like, I think that this is the best option and the best next step for like a safe and healthy delivery for both of you.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of people...
And explaining what doctors are trying to tell them, because so many times I think the doctors will say something and there's so many medical words that they're using that I'm like having to tell people where I'm like, hey, they're saying they will give you a little bit more time. It means we're okay right now, but this is a strong possibility that this might happen. Or when they're saying, okay, think about it, but I think we need to go now, they're saying, hey, we're going, we need to go. And then sometimes explaining those words, because I think doctors, don't want to, it's hard to sometimes be like, we need to go. We want to give people options and we want to give people choices. And sometimes we're seeing an outcome that we're like,
there's no choice here.
There's
but
no,
to go.
yeah, we might not have the outcome we want if we're waiting around and stuff like that. So just kind of explaining all those things, what the doctor says in layman's terms, you know what I mean? Or like just, sometimes not even layman's, it's just more clear because every doctor also just will say the same thing but in a different way because that's just their personality and stuff like that. And I think sometimes we're there to add the personality into a conversation. So that's what I will say.
I want to backpedal a little bit because you said in the beginning when you were talking about the C-sections that there's certain types, like emergent. Yeah. Like, can you explain those a little bit more? And then also maybe enlighten me on, like, where you see C-sections the most. Like, what goes wrong where, like, women can maybe even, like, expect, like, hey, all right, this is, early on, this is what's going on. Maybe I should start thinking of a C-section. Like, just...
Yeah. You know, I hear so many times when people afterwards are like, I had an emergency C-section. I had an emergency C-section. And the reality is that a lot of these people probably didn't have emergency C. You had an emergent C-section. But it's slightly... I know, that little difference. But, you know, we have a, hey, we need to go soon, which is usually like, we have like an hour to 2 hours that we're like, we're going to be going for this. We have, hey, we need to go very soon, which is usually within like 40 minutes. We call it decision-to-incision. So the time we decide to the time that you're being cut, we should be making it within this much time. We have like our 20-minute one where it's like deciding to bed. Again, still not completely an emergency. I know that feels like an emergency to mom. I cannot... I understand that doesn't feel like a lot of time to be 20 minutes. Yeah, it feels.
I can't even get ready in 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's, you know, that's wild, and that's a wild amount of time. But to us, again, urgent, emergent, not an emergency. Yeah. And then there is emergency, where we are ripping out cords out of the wall, jumping on bed, and like the quickest ones that I've personally been in are decision to incision behind 4 minutes, baby is out.
Damn.
So like that's yeah. I think that is like, to me, when I think of like,
and obviously no one wishes that.
No one wishes that, but like that is like,
when would you see something like that?
You know, we see that that's so rare, right? That's like, oh my gosh, that's so rare, you know?
That's enlightening to hear.
Yeah, that's so rare. We don't see that. We obviously know that that's a possibility with certain things. So like, if someone has tons of fluid, we know and stuff like that, polyhydramnios. So tons of fluid in there, lots of amniotic fluid, and something like someone's...
Like inside the belly?
Inside the belly. And
that's unsafe for mom?
It's unsafe more for baby.
Okay.
So the thing is, if let's say your water just broke, dilated, cord comes out because baby's still high up and cord comes out. Well, we can't have the cord coming out before baby. So someone is keeping their hand in there while we rush back to make sure baby's not landing on that cord. An insane amount of bleeding.
If baby lands on the cord, what happens?
If baby starts, we see that in just labor, and, you know, that's something that I always tell people when they're looking at the strip and, are those me having my contractions, or is that baby heart rate and all that stuff? I always joke, once you're there, I'm like, and I have you on the monitors, I'm like, it's my job to worry. That's the first thing I tell people. I'm like, it's my job to worry. You have done all the hard part till now. Now you do not have to, like, worry about this. I was like, this is my job. I'm here all night, 12 hours, looking at this monitor that potentially is on you. Obviously, we have different things of different levels of when people can be off the monitor and, you know, intermittent monitoring and stuff like that. But, you know, there's certain times that we have you on the monitors at all times. And I tell people, this is my job to worry. You do not have to worry after this point. My job. That is what I'm getting paid for right now, is to worry for you, is to monitor for you, is to trust in my gut sometimes of like, this is what I know is happening and this is also what I think is happening by looking at this. Yeah. So those things, again, knowing those things and watching what is going on kind of leads to those decisions too sometimes, because it's us having to, doctors aren't always looking at those 24/7. It's our job as nurses, and to relay that information adequately and be like, okay, this is what's going on. But I try to tell everybody, my job. Mm-hmm. You get to go to sleep.
Mind your business.
You get to go to sleep after this point. You know what I mean? And you get to, don't worry about that stuff. You worry about how you're feeling and taking care of yourself and going through this crazy labor process. But you don't have to worry about like, I'm going to let you know if I'm like seeing something with baby, or we're seeing a dip, or baby lands. We see that sometimes from baby landing on its cord. You lay a certain way and baby lays on its cord, and that's when we see little dips in the heart rate and stuff like that.
Because that means it's not really getting oxygen, right?
Yeah. Okay. So we're not getting as much oxygen. And again, depends on the amount of time, depends when it's happening, and it's not due to like our head being squeezed, it's just the cord being squeezed. Again, we can land on it and then we can move and we can see those little things. Sometimes we're wrapped a certain way in there, and then the big one is if it happened to come out of you first. Yeah, we wouldn't want that.
It's like pulling a rope.
Yeah, exactly. And then with any other like kind of bleeding and stuff like that, sometimes that we might see, we worry about the placenta, then we would also be, more emergencyly going back, or if we saw something with baby's heart rate that was usually when those things are happening, they're usually urgent, emergent, like I said, 40 minutes, 20 minutes amount of time. But every so once in a while there is.
I want to kind of demystify like the idea of a C-section, or like the negative ideas behind it, because like it's like you said, like baby comes out, mom and dad are just as happy as if she had a vaginal birth. Yeah. So like just explain to me like why C-section should be like looked at as like just a medical procedure, not something that like you need to be like so upset about or scared for.
Yeah. So the hard thing is like we live in California, and I feel like very fortunate about that. Although we all have the same standards in theory in the whole country, and we're supposed to be under, so everybody is supposed to be under this 23.6% of first time mothers giving birth, or first pregnancies giving birth. We want under 23.6% of them to be C-sections. So we have these standards of we want all of these to the rest of it, and very rarely is it going above that mark. So if you think about it, that's less than 25% of the time for these first time mothers. Other related factors, if you've had them before and this and that, don't exactly count, or next babies and everything like that. But for your first time having it, we are pushing, because we know that if you have a vaginal birth the first time,
the second
you're
so
more you're more likely to the second time, third times, everything like that. So that's such a big standard, such a big number. Again, I know that California, that's a very big deal. I can't speak for other states. Yeah. Can only speak for here. Can only speak for me working in San Diego, So I've heard stories about them being a little quicker in other places. I don't know, I can only speak from my experiences. Course, yeah. And I can say that everywhere I've worked, they're under that number every month, and usually way under that number every month. Like at like less than 15% sometimes.
Oh, that's really awesome.
And where I take this, and maybe it's looking at it a little bit cynically, is that we see the numbers of way back in the day before C-sections even existed, and how many babies would die in utero. And it's around that same number. It's just around that same percentage.
Yikes.
So
that also just
so to me, that's saying if we're on that same line, I feel like that tells
You're
us
just saving
something.
lives.
Yeah. I think that tells us something, that we're not going overboard. We know kind of these numbers from way before of how many babies will die in utero, therefore moms will die sometimes, and how much those numbers have changed. But
That's cool. That's a really awesome way to look at it.
yeah. So my whole thing is, and like I said, medicine, we've created these things, right? Like C-sections, and we have all these medications to help, induce labor and all these things that I think people say causes more C-sections. But we have these things because we have medicine, and we have modern medicine, and we've learned, and we're like, wow, okay, hey, actually the longer we wait, we might have adverse outcomes that we don't want to happen, versus now we're actually putting off those adverse outcomes and helping a lot of these things. And I think that's where I see it with a lot of times with C-sections, is that it's hard because it's been made this scary thing, which I'm not saying it's not, or kind of like this possibility that will never happen to you, when in theory, if you look at it, obviously we all want to be under that standard, and there's things we can do to prevent that standard and be way under that standard. Like I said, sometimes every month is different. But let's say we put it at that 23.6%. Let's say every time we're hitting that right on the line or something, it's less than 25% of the time, but it's still a big amount of time that it does happen.
Like a quarter.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah. And so, but we also have all these new things and reasons why we know it happens.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's our job, or the doctor's job and everything, to know when we're in labor, to kind of push that boundary a little bit of like, keep trying and being a little bit nervous about during labor and stuff like that. Watching that strip of your baby's heart rate and being okay with it being a little bit naughty is what I call it. And then knowing when, hey, we can't, like,
there's no more fucking around.
Yeah. I always say, I can take a lot of adrenaline and so much, and then sometimes I'm looking at something and I'm like, this isn't, knowing when it's not going to go well, and knowing when, I think it's hard because sometimes I think we're not always prepared beforehand of like, hey, the higher risk factors you have,
and how
the higher chance. I think just knowing it's a possibility.
Okay.
I think if you just go into it being like, hey, this is not what we want. This is not what anybody wants in this room with you. I think that's the mindset, though, that we feel sometimes, is that people think that we want this, or that the doctor's pushing this because they want to, get out or just make it easier on themselves and this and that. And
because it is scary. I
know 100% it's scary, but I always joke, and I'm like, none of these doctors, especially in the middle of the night with us, I'm like, they'd rather be asleep. None of them want to be going back there in the middle of the night. Like, I promise you that, you know what I mean? Like, that is not the goal ever, like, they
want to come in, deliver the baby,
and they
sure
walk out,
breathing.
and they don't even have to make sure it's breathing, because it's not their job. That's me and NICU's job at that point. So like, like they're walking out 2 seconds later, and way less liability on them, way less, everything. That's the way they would trust me. They would want that, of course, 100% of the time.
I mean, that's so good to hear and know, though, especially coming from someone who works in that and sees that every day, because I think that women are really scared. And there's so much social media and I think negative attention on C-sections that people get, like, false information.
Yeah.
And then women look at that and they see one video and then they click on it and watch it, and then they're like on their feed all of this other like false information, or other women with like scare tactics and things like that just like are not like, it's you get sucked down a hole, and then you're like reading into all this information, and they're like, I've heard a lot from friends that I know and people about like being induced and like not wanting to be induced and thinking that that's like a really bad thing. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's another one that social media has definitely like made this big scary idea, and that is the worst outcome you could really have, and it's going to be way more painful or this or that. And, I obviously haven't gone through it myself exactly, so I can't speak to it like that, but I can speaking to different nurses actually that have had inductions versus not inductions, and seeing it myself of many people having them. And what I will say is that's never our goal, right? We would love if we always joke that we're like, I want my water to break, me to progress by myself at home till this level, till this many centimeters dilated, get the epidural, sleep all night, wake up and be 10 centimeters, and then push out a baby in 2 pushes. Like, that's like, all of us want that, you know what I mean? But that just doesn't happen, you know what I mean? Reasons for it, right? And there's induction and there's augmentation.
Okay.
Induction is we are starting your labor for you.
Okay.
We have many ways to do that. And augmentation means your labor in some way or form has already started. You already started having contractions. Your water already broke.
But it's not going fast enough.
It's not even that it's not going fast enough. It might have stalled out.
Oh, okay.
It might not even be going.
The car stalled.
Yeah,
the car stalled.
Yeah. And we know now, because of modern medicine, all these reasons why sometimes that's not the best. We're gonna have adverse outcomes,
right? I mean, that's how moms die.
Yeah, or
babies die.
Yeah, and so like a big one, right? Is, and again, it's augmentation versus induction. Again, it's very similar, almost the same thing. But your water breaks. You're at home, and sometimes it's fine, and some people stay home. Nothing's happening, no contractions.
Oh shit.
Coming to the hospital, no contractions, and we're like walking around. We're like, yourself, okay, let's. Ma'am. Yeah, sometimes people do. 80% of the time, but sometimes water did break, and nothing's happening. They're not going into labor. We're like, hey, walk around, do this, do that. Nothing. So then we're like, what do we do? Do we just keep waiting?
No.
You could. But that's what a lot of people on the internet would tell you to do. Would be like, get on the ball, walk around, do this, do that. That's awesome. In theory. It doesn't happen for everybody like that. And the reality is, we know, and again, everybody's different too. The longer you go with your water broken, the higher chance of infection in the uterus. And that infection isn't necessarily you're having that infection and you're going to have symptoms from it, but the one that it's really affecting is the baby.
Yeah.
And eventually we call that Chorio. The infection is called Chorio. And eventually, I will say that's a big reason I see babies go to NICU.
Okay.
Is not always, but the longer and longer babies in there with an infection inside of them, living in this infection, so in that amniotic fluid, the higher chances. And we know different hospitals kind of have different standards for it, all around the same amount of time. Either some people like the 18-hour mark of your water being broken, and some people like the 24-hour mark. They're very close. Both for sure by the 24-hour mark of, a lot of times at that point, you're going to get started on antibiotics and all these things. But sometimes I see people, it will be an hour in, and they already start having the infection symptoms. Their temperature spikes super high, and stuff like that, baby's heart rate increases, mom's heart rate increases, all those ones, that the normal stuff. But some people, so you just never know if you never know how your body's going to react to something like that. I feel like
I would be afraid to poop.
No, I feel like, but that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not going to go anywhere. But I'm just saying, like,
I'd be like, I can't do anything.
No, but that's what I'm saying. It's one of those things where, that it might be a reason where we start the augmentation and induction of giving you meds to get you into labor, because we don't have forever. I would love it to be forever. And, the other reason for induction, stuff like that, let's say in terms of length of people being like, oh, why at 40 and whatever days, or by 41 weeks that we start inducing people, is because, and this is, again, different for everybody, the placenta. The placenta has an expiration date. It's not right away. It's not like, boom, one day, done. Sometimes, every so once in a while. But usually it starts deteriorating. And those nutrients, baby is not getting those nutrients. It's not filtering as well as it used to. And so, depending on the woman, we know that that's an age thing, which is why, we all get really upset and are not happy about the geriatric pregnancies at 35 and above, but we know that that's one of the reasons. It's just like everything else, it stops working as well.
I just picture like a woman coming in with like gray hair and glasses and like a cane.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no. But, and then health and stuff like that also have to do with it, but yeah, the placenta starts deteriorating, especially at that, like, around that 40-week mark. But again, everybody's different. So some people, it could have started deteriorating and kind of not working as well, not filtering way before that. And we see that in your labs and how baby looks on the monitor and just all those different things that we're monitoring your whole pregnancy, especially at the end of your pregnancy. And those are the reasons we're usually inducing you. Mm-hmm. It's just it's not always so easy to explain that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, there's a reason we went to nursing school for, a while, and it's to understand those things. And I can try to explain it to you as best as possible, but usually something is going on, or, like with gestational diabetes, baby's getting too big, and everybody's like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, not that big of a deal.
But then you're pushing a 10-pound baby out your vagina. It's like,
yeah,
how?
Well, and sometimes it's not even 10 pounds. Sometimes, it's not even, it's your hip width and everything like that. 8.5 pounds might be too big for you, depending on it. That's a big baby, but that's what I'm saying. Every person's different. I've seen people like their hips literally like just not wide enough, even for a 7-pound baby. Like, it's just, everybody's so different. So we know that is a risk factor, and that is a reason when babies get too big that we do end up in C-sections. So, and again, we would love to avoid that, which is why we do an induction to avoid that. So it's just kind of one of those things where, again, we are usually trying to avoid adverse things from happening.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there are a lot of misconceptions.
Yeah.
I feel like that's one of the biggest ones. And like another big misconception is just that C-section is like being pushed on people, or it's not a safe option, or things like that.
Yeah, like I said, I can only speak for California because I have heard, and nurses come from other areas, and I hear about their standards of even medication and how it's used. Something like Pitocin is a big buzzword, or oxytocin, same thing, medication, and people are like, oh my gosh, gonna cause a lot of pain, or gonna really bad for you. And I've heard other states where I'm like, whoa, you're giving that much at a time, and that's like, I'm like, whoa, to me, versus I know California standards and our rules and everything like that, and
slow and steady,
so slow and steady and minimal, that I know how we're giving this medication and safely giving this medication, and again, it's usually because we need, our contractions are not getting strong enough. They're not getting close enough together. And we need that to happen in order for you to have a baby. If you're not having contractions and they're not strong enough, we're not having a vaginal birth. Like, we need those things to happen. And the reality is we don't have weeks anymore, I'm going to even say. Because usually this, that could have been a 5-day labor situation, and nowadays, everybody's like, oh, they're trying to just push people, and I'm like, no, we also know that you probably don't want to be, our top is 3 days, which still is to me a long time to be in labor, you know what I mean? Yeah. But usually, 2 to 3 days is usually where we see, especially for first-time moms. People usually don't want to be in labor more than that, which is why we're giving meds, because that's exhausting. That's an exhausting process. I can't imagine.
You don't really sleep.
Yeah. You're not really sleeping. Unless you have an epidural, you're not really sleeping. And so it's one of those things where it's just, we also know the toll it takes, and we have modern medicine to be able to help it out. And yes, in some ways speed it up, because, you can do it sometimes, but usually people don't want to be in labor for that long, and usually in pain for that amount of time, and their body's tired, and we have more chances of
And it's not like you're going
risks
to sleep when the
happening.
baby comes out either.
Yeah, so
it's
again, it's
sweet,
one of those...
I will never sleep again.
Again, we're just, usually we're just trying to do the best we can.
Just doing
and
your best.
Yeah, we're just trying our best, and we're, what we think is best for you and everything like that. And I think, like I said, it's just we know that that's not the ideal thing that everybody wants. Again, we would love, lovely birth of, it goes and how it's supposed to, but the reality
goes ideal to someone's birth plan.
Yeah, exactly. And we all, we all have that too, but we just also know that that's just, like I said before, babies do what they want, labor does what they want. So
I know we talked briefly before about intuition versus like medical care and like how to advocate for yourself. Like how do you feel, or like explain to women how they can advocate for themselves when they're like not feeling like they're getting what they need or getting what, or not being heard during their pregnancy or during their childbirth.
So many times I think it really is your nurse, unfortunately or fortunately. But I think, from what I've seen and what I know, I do think that, we are there to be there for you. We are listening to you and everything like that. I know sometimes I've looked back at a situation and felt like, oh my gosh, was I listening to them? And sometimes, if it is that emergency situation, it's like, I don't have a sec to listen to you right now. And that's unfortunate. You know what I mean? And then you look back and I try to connect to that person and be like, hey, I'm sorry. I know that must have felt like a lot, and try to retouch on that and everything like that to gain back some of that control.
I know
if you
hard.
go, no. I think if you come at it at a way, honestly, I think I've seen now these days where I can feel like a lot of doctors feel hesitancy and stuff is when you're advocating for yourself, but it sounds like someone told you to say this from social media. And we know when these words are like, okay, this is not your own words versus this is what you feel like you should be saying.
Like you went on Instagram, not like WebMD.
Yeah, exactly. And or someone was like telling you these things and it's not something that's related to your care, but it's just something you felt like someone told you should say. And what I would say is really look at your like labor process and your story and your medical and be like, okay, what do I really want? And I think that so many times will, and also we want those same things for you. You know what I mean? Like we automatically, are doing the delayed cord clamping if it's safe. We are, doing the skin to skin if it's safe. You know what I mean? We are doing all these automatic things and talking to you. And, again, I will say like as a nurse, stopping those situations where I feel like you're not being heard. Like maybe, there's situations where like maybe a doctor feels like a little more rushed and where I'm like, okay, give it a sec. Like I let's discuss first before we just make this decision, and giving that pause to that patient and stuff like that. And it is on us a little bit and stuff like that. But I think having that rapport, it's going to be always different, but having that rapport with the patient, but also, kind of going into the situation where, it's scary and it's a little bit of a blind trust situation. But if trying to go in with it as much as with, hey, this person cares, and this person, especially labor and delivery nurses, I think, it's such a niche field of people that really do want to be there and want the best, that I think going into it with like, hey, these nurses care and these nurses want the best for me. They want what I want for myself. And if you're able to express that and talk about that at the beginning, and believe nurses when they're telling you like, we do want these things for you, then I think I see really like positive outcomes from that happening.
I mean, what I'm hearing is that like it's the nurse really that like makes the whole experience.
Yeah,
and I've heard that from a lot of my friends.
Yeah, I mean 100%. And I mean, I think there's doctors too, and everything like that. But again, I think it's some of the same thing of like if you go into it thinking that they want the worst from you, it's like going to be a little bit of a battle versus like being like, hey, like, I'm really excited this. I trust you, but these are the things that I want. But also knowing, and I will say listening to, like I said, your own, trusting your own experience, because everybody's experience, everything that brought you up until this point is so different. I can share my own with this one
Yeah, tell us.
that recently happened was I have something very rare called a cerclage, and scheduling my appointment for getting it removed. And again, this is, I always tell everybody, I'm like, write notes down. Like, what is that doctor saying to you? And like, have your phone and being like, okay, what was that said? Do you have it on a piece of paper for when I know? Like, you know, taking a little bit of ownership of your own medical stuff, because doctors see a million people, and unfortunately,
they don't always remember everything.
They
about
don't
you,
always
and
remember anything about everybody. There's a million charts, there's a million things, and even the best of them, it's just, and once you're kind of gone and you're not in front of their face, they're not always going to remember, unfortunately. Like, it's just like anybody at any job, you're not going to everything there, our job is to make everything as clear as possible. In this instance, there's no nurse, right? So it's doctor to front desk. Well, the front desk isn't medical. They only know what the doctor tells them, and they're scheduling appointments and everything like that. So they're scheduling me, and I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is not the correct dates. Like, this is weeks after when she told me that it was going to happen. And they were like, oh, well, I just talked to them, and they said that this was fine. And I was like, no, they said, usually it comes out 35
like,
to 36.
Let me pull out my notes.
Weeks. Literally, I was like, no, I think they said 35 to 36 weeks. And she was like, well, I just talked to the doctor, and she said it was okay. And I was like, and this is where, again, even me, and I get that feels awkward sometimes, and I get, especially when you don't know, how scary that can be to that pushback. And this is
coming from someone who's, like, knows LND.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, I think there's so many times LND nurses would have probably not said anything either. And it's sometimes that pushback a little bit. And I was like, very nicely, like, hey, like, I would really appreciate if you could check with her again. This is my due date. These are the weeks she said that this was going to be done. I would really appreciate if you just checked with her again before this happened.
Calm, cool,
and
collected.
She did right then and there. She's like, okay, you just hold on the phone, and I'll like write her again and everything like that. And you know what? They obviously checked again and checked the dates, and they were like, oh, you know what? Actually, yeah, it does need to be a few weeks earlier than that. And, it was that just me standing up for myself. And I just tell people that doesn't, not just with labor and delivery, but all healthcare and everything like that. I could have easily gotten mad at that front desk person or blamed her if it had scheduled her or anything like that. Like, she talked, but the thing is, like, especially her, she doesn't know.
She's just following orders.
And exactly. And like, the doctor has a million, and this is when she's there in the clinic that day with the secretary director. You're here that day. Is that the day you want to schedule? And the doctor, I'm sure, was like, sure, sounds good. Not really thinking of what everything is happening and everything like that.
Who knows? I mean, if they're at a clinic, typically they see the same type of patients on the same days. So, like, that could have been a different patient, and that could have been a mistake, and that's what happens.
The thing is, she wasn't there at the clinic. Yeah. Actually, for those few weeks, she was at a different one. So, there was like, oh, actually, we just have to get you to go a different place so she can perform that procedure. But, sometimes it is having to, as much as, other people wouldn't understand their medical care, it's, hey, I wrote down notes, like, they said this is when what this was going to happen, and kind of like keeping track of that, on your own. We're all adults, and sometimes it's just, just like everything else, we got to keep track of, are we eating our 3 meals throughout the day? Are we paying our bills? Are we doing everything? And it's the same thing with our medical care, like, as much as it can be on other people, and I can blame other people for like making a mistake, I'm going to say that with quotes. It's also on me to be like, hey, no, I was paying attention to my medical care, and this is what was told to me, and this is when I needed to get this done. And, we do that with everything else. And
I think that's called accountability.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where I think taking that and understanding that and being like, having those notes and those things of like, I understood this, and I think that would make, those things go so much further in labor and delivery.
Let's talk a little bit more, since you kind of started mentioning your own pregnancy. How, I mean, I know that you've hit a few bumps in the road. You've been on medical leave now for since 20
weeks, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a long freaking time to be sitting on your booty.
Yeah.
So tell me about your experience and how, like, knowing all that you know about L&D, has that, like, affected anxiety? How have you navigated through all of that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
And, like, explain like the hurdles that
I was very fortunate, and, like, knock on wood, I got pregnant right away, and, didn't have that, like, that so many women struggle with, the infertility, or that just want to be, and everything like that. Got very lucky with that. You know what I mean? I was not expecting that, especially given history in my family of getting pregnant. And
yeah, because your mom had the twins, your younger siblings, at 40.
40.
40.
Woo! Yeah, exactly. And I know she struggled a lot, even with me, to get pregnant, and then with the twins. And so it was a worry for myself. I was like, oh God, like, when I go through that, like, is this going to be an issue? Am I going to... But going into that mindset of, like, hey, this might be an issue, and so, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I did things to help prepare for that, that I think.
What were those things?
I stopped drinking months before, so started eating a lot healthier. Big one that I think people don't realize, and for me, have noticed, and I've talked to many people, and this seems to be a big one. I made my husband stop smoking weed. So I think that, and I think people don't realize how big of one that is, and their health.
Yeah,
of, like,
I've been
the
hearing
sperm.
a lot more about that, and like I heard that, like, saunas too, like, stay away
from
the sauna, hot tubs, all of that stuff. Yeah.
Yep. So just how much their
team
health,
effort, baby.
Team effort, their health matters a lot too. So did all that. Very lucky. Happened. I was like, oh my gosh, like, very nervous, because I knew the possibilities of, 1 in 4
of everything.
So 1 in 4, a lot of times the pregnancy just doesn't stick right away, and you find that out usually by the 8-week mark. That was a big, like, ooh, okay, that happened, and we're good. Doing labor and delivery, well, all that, being pregnant sometimes isn't always the funnest, because sometimes you see the bad and you see the scary stuff happen, and it just makes you worry. But I was, chugging along just fine and feeling okay for the most part. And then, you're always, everybody's always worried about their 20-week anatomy scan. Funny, even talking to labor and delivery nurses, where they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that. It didn't even cross my head, because you're so focused on, like, does baby look good? Does baby look good? Does baby look good? And so, we're going through my whole anatomy scan, and they're doing the whole thing, or checking all the parts, and everything's there, and everything looks really great. She's like, awesome, awesome, awesome.
But you're anatomy.
Well, and so I think people don't realize, like, at that point, external one, and we do the whole external one, and then, women know this. Men, I think, for the first time, are like, whoa, when we have to do that internal one, everybody's like, whoa, what is this? But the reason they do that one, actually, and which a lot of, they don't explain to you why they're doing that one, is actually,
open up.
Is that they're checking your cervix.
Okay.
And they're checking your cervical length. But again, I think if mine had gone normal, I wouldn't even, I know in theory why we're doing that, but I would never have thought about that. I've talked to other labor and delivery nurses, and they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, like, I know that, but they did it, and I didn't even think about it, because unless it's abnormal, which is so rare, you never even get explained, or you're never even told, like, oh, your cervix looks great, right length. Like, no, it's just not even something that's, like, mentioned.
They're
it's
like,
just
looks good, all right.
Yeah, exactly. But, knowing what I know, I kind of, the pause, and I knew right away, and I knew, it wasn't even something I had thought about that would be a possibility. Average is 3 to 4 centimeters. Above 2.5 centimeters, they might check in a few more weeks, but they're not completely concerned. Under that amount, there's a concern that you go into preterm labor.
Okay.
If it's under 2, we're extremely concerned. I was sitting at like 2.1.
Oh, no.
And so, right away they were like, and doing what I do, which is very active, very strenuous with pushing people around and moving people and walking, up and down, and
you're on your feet for 12 hours.
You're bending over, you're squatting down, all that stuff, not having a desk job per se, was, so right away they were like, you're not going back to work. And I was like, what do you mean, for a week? For 2 weeks? Like, what are we talking about here? And hearing like, no, like, I don't think you're going back at all. And I was like, whoa, I'm only 20, I'm halfway through. Like, this is so soon. Like, what do you mean? But also very scary at that point to know that I could go into preterm labor and lose the baby and everything like that. And, I'd made it this far, and it was just like, that was, a punch to the gut a little bit. And I was just like, oh my gosh, and then also knowing, being labor and delivery, having to explain that to a partner and having to explain kind of what that meant and everything like that.
Hey, babe, I'm not going to be working for the next 20 weeks.
Well, he was
plus 6 months.
Yeah. Well, he was sitting there, but I think also him, honestly, it hit him a little bit just, hey, you can go into preterm labor and we can just lose all of this that, we've been thinking about.
And then it's also dangerous for yourself, too. Mm-hmm. So it's like, that's scary for both of you.
Yeah. So it was just like, it was a weird, out of your control, but just like, when something is so out of your control that you didn't even think was going to happen, like, I was like, whoa. So I was put on something called progesterone right away. Helps hopefully thicken, or at least keep it the same length, the cervix. And I was going to have to go in every week to get my cervix checked. 3 weeks later, probably some stressful situations added to that and everything like that. But 3 weeks later, I started having contractions. Not per se painful ones, but could feel my stomach tightening and tightening and tightening. And it'd been hours, and I was like, oh, I feel like I'm going nuts. Like, I'm sure this is what other people feel. I was like, oh, let's just go in. If it's nothing, I understand that feeling. And I tell moms all the time, like, it's fine. Come in. We check baby's good. You're good. And we send you home. And it's okay. You know what I mean? I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking like, oh, maybe I have a UTI. Like, those can cause early labor and contractions again. So something like that. I don't know. I was giving myself any excuse, and
not to go to the hospital.
Not to go to the hospital, or not to go in. And again, I was 23 weeks. And to me, I knew, like, ideal viability, we say, is like 24 weeks, which is still so before.
Still, like,
oh my gosh, way before you want to have a
formed.
baby. Yeah. But that was in my head. So I go in, I'm having the contractions, and I get I've had all of them, like, meds, I say, pretty much, like, not as the induction ones, but I've had all the meds that, so now I fully understand those that moms can have. I got the magnesium, to, slow down the contractions and for neural protection and everything like that, which does not make you feel good. It's a really yucky medication. I got my
makes you, like, drowsy too, right?
Oh, it just makes you feel awful.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a very strong medication. I got the betamethasone, which is to mature their lungs, right? And get it 24 hours apart, big shot that goes in your butt, and it hurts. And I knew that from before, from seeing other people's reaction of just this is a regular, like, and it's not necessarily the poke, it's the medicine, and it's not fun. And, I did that whole thing, and I was like, oh my God, that wasn't fun. And then also, I'm O negative. And so they were like, we got to give you your RhoGAM shot, right? In case for baby. So there was another one. And then I was getting a few other meds, like, orally as well, to, like, try to, like, slow everything down. So the contractions and everything like that. So, and they were worried, they checked my cervix, and they were worried that it was maybe shortening and stuff like that. So, that all happened. See the doctor finally the next day.
And you're in the hospital for a few days, right?
Yeah, I'm in the hospital for 5 days. So I'm in the hospital.
5. Nearly a week. That's tough.
Yeah, so the next day, talked to the doctor, and she's like, hey, they're kind of at that point where we almost wouldn't do cerclage. Usually we do them a lot earlier. So we see, that 20-week mark or whatever. People are a lot shorter and they do it. Cerclage is when they sew your cervix shut, which is not fun. Yeah. Operating room. They give you a spinal. It's like how when they do a C-section, and they do that. Very, quick and easy procedure, but does
it hurt
doesn't
after?
Feel like it doesn't feel no.
Okay, that's good.
No, it doesn't hurt after or anything like that, but it's just one of those things where,
nobody wants
you had a
that.
procedure.
Yeah.
You had a procedure done. So, but yeah, I consulted with my doctor, and she was like, "Hey, I think this is something that
would be beneficial.
You're beneficial, but you're also borderline." So, apparently now at Rady's, viability for a baby, they're starting at 22 and 5 days.
Wow.
And I was 23 and 1. So they were kind of like, do we give it to you a little bit? Like, do we do the cerclage? Because technically your baby is viable if it comes out. We're going to try to do everything we can.
Okay.
And I was like,
no, I don't want it.
Yeah, I was like, I don't want my baby to come out now. I want time, you know what I mean? And so doing that, and then days later, I'm not really having contractions. I'm having one here and there, and still have contractions here and there and everything like that. But we know, everything's gone well. But then it was just, okay, we're just, every week, we're counting down the weeks. And, from 20 to 23, I had been like on my butt, laying down, not really doing much and everything like that.
Would you call it activity
restrictions?
Restriction.
Yes.
No more bed rest.
No more bed rest. If you're bed rested, you're in the hospital bed rested, pretty much. They'll keep you in the hospital. So I think people, everybody's like, bed rest, and I'm like, well, not exactly. Activity restriction, which is almost the same, but it's not like you have to be laying in bed the whole time.
Just no long walks.
Nothing active. Nothing active. So yeah, nothing active, nothing in the vagina.
So after the cerclage, everything's been good.
Everything's been good. I've had, everybody has their moments of like, oh my gosh, but everything's looked great. So I've been very fortunate about that. But, that's usually one of those things where they see right away. It's either going to take and, we got your contractions to stop and it stays. And then, your labor seems like it's going to go, they usually see it closer to the full term if it goes really well, or right away within like the week. Usually they know like you're still having the contraction. This isn't working.
Baby wants out.
Yeah, or your body is. It's not even the baby wants out. Your body is actually, and that's when it does feel like it's your fault. Sometimes is my body is not withstanding this, and it's just opening up and kicking it out a little bit.
It just shows that you can have all the knowledge and do all the right things and still have no control.
No control.
So how have you mentally been dealing with that?
Yeah, so I think that was hard, right? And I think it's hard as a labor and delivery nurse because I know that if that had been the outcome of, hey, this baby comes out of me and everything like that, especially the first time, especially at the 20-week mark, I kind of knew this might never be a possibility for me. My body might just not be able to take it. And so that was so important, speaking to doctors, and they knew that too. And they were like, hey, I know, but how important this first time is of us getting to you to go as long as possible, because usually all labors are shorter than that. Every single labor or every single baby you have is short. It kind of knows what it's doing. So it usually shortens, the process shortens, whether it's a week or days or whatever. Usually just everybody, even if you're full term, it's usually slightly quicker. So if I wasn't even making it the first time, it was gonna be one of those things the next times around. I feel like I was going somewhere with this.
You were just telling me how you've mentally dealt with your...
Yeah, then when I heard everything, it was a very scary, internalizing a lot of things. Not really wanting to explain to everybody exactly what was going on.
Of the worst
yeah, it's just, not wanting to tell everybody that something is wrong, or especially when you feel like you did something wrong, even though I had to keep telling myself you know better, you didn't do anything wrong, and knowing that that's a natural form. Yeah, exactly. And treating my own self like a patient a little bit, even though I, still had those feelings, knowing that it wasn't, but kind of understanding that those feelings are natural to have, a little bit of feeling like something is your fault, even though you have no control over it. But kind of giving myself grace, a lot of grace. and knowing what was okay for me and my body, and knowing like when I was like okay to do something, you know, sitting and everything like that, but also being like, hey, what am I gonna still give myself grace about? What am I gonna? I was like, to a certain point, if I'm not okay mentally, I'm not gonna be okay physically. And so knowing when I was like, asking the doctor, I was like, hey, I'm on activities restriction. Does this mean I drive somewhere, and if I go do I have to sit at my house, or can I drive somewhere and sit at a friend's house and like hang out with them there? And they're like, yeah, that's okay. Or I was like, can I sit somewhere and go to a restaurant? Like, can I go to dinner? Like, I was asking questions like that. I was like, can I even go to dinner and sit somewhere else? And them saying, that's okay, but just keep asking those things to like make myself being like, hey, what are my limits? Like, what can I do to make myself feel like a human being again? Because I think sometimes you just you stop like doing all those normal little tasks, like, oh my gosh.
Well, because you get nervous. You're like, all right, what if, because something does happen and you're like, shit, I shouldn't have gone to dinner last night,
Did I cause it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I remember TMI. I remember at 28 weeks, and this had been, months. And I was like, so I'm 28 weeks, which is like a big, like, relief to like everybody, like we know just the outcomes of babies are just so much better once you hit 20 weeks. And I remember asking my doctor, and I was like, can I get waxed? And she was like, oh my God, yeah. Like, you're fine like, now. Go for it.
I'm getting really itchy.
Yeah, I was like, hey, so I did this right before the 20 weeks, but now it's time again. Yeah. Like, I'm like, and she's like, oh yeah, it's good. But like, I was like,
even from like,
even labor and delivery, I was like, again, you don't want to cause anything. You don't want to do anything that's going to like, you're so, you're scared, you're nervous about everything.
There's anxiety around being a new mom anyways, and then like having all the information that you have, it's kind of hard to filter and not be nurse Tamara, but just be mom Tamara.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I don't have all the answers and everything like that, and I've always, even said that to all my patients, and like, I've appreciated nurses and doctors so much more that when they are like, hey, I don't know, this is what I think, but actually I'm going to go talk to other people and ask them what they think. I feel like I'm like, oh, I just trust you so much more, in that situation.
The honesty
and the just, we don't all know everything. So sometimes, I think I know that something's okay, and in theory, I'm like, okay, this should be fine, but just kind of like being like, okay, I'm like, I'm going to be extra cautious. And like
having those double checks and making sure, talking to the doctor, advocating for yourself. It sounds like, I mean, those are like the tips that you have for those women who have all of, bad things happen, or even not bad things.
Yeah, I think just, I hate being that person being like, there's no dumb questions. But my thing is just like, it's not even about the dumb question. It's just like, if you have a question, just ask it, because the reality is like somebody else has had the question, or it's not going to hurt anybody to ask the question. No one,
it's only going to hurt you.
Yeah. Even if you feel a little silly asking the question, or there's a group and they're the perinatologists, they're like the specialists when it comes to like all these baby things and the high risk situations and everything like that. And that's a doctor. And, I saw different ones, and even her, and I love mine and everything like that. But I saw different ones. And I remember when I, had to talk with one to leave, the hospital after my procedure and everything like that. And everybody had been like, okay, like, nothing inside the vagina. And I feel like, they're all like trying to be really coy around it. And he was like, no sex, nothing can touch it. Like, do not put a penis in there. Do not put fingers in there. Do not put fingers around it. And I was like, sir, honestly, I appreciate it right now, because he was so blunt about it a little bit. But I also know that is funny enough.
You gotta be.
You think, but then you would be surprised how often we see people come in and they're bleeding and they're like, oh, I have a cerclage. We're like, what happened? They're like, oh, I had sex. And they're like, well, I wasn't really told not to have sex.
Damn.
And so we were just like, and we're like, but they probably just were like, oh, nothing inside the vagina, but also not maybe reiterating, or, and sometimes they were told, I wasn't even told, or, which, usually things were told, but I mean, sometimes just being as blunt as you can with the situation. And I was like, oh, honestly, I appreciate you, sir, though. I can't even, and it was just funny, though. But I was like, you know what? I completely understand why he's being this blunt, because I've seen the other side of it sometimes. And I was like, you know what? Until that point, no one had said it that bluntly to me. They had said, the word that hopefully everybody should understand, but that's just not reality. So just that bluntness, I think, not everybody likes or appreciates. I'm definitely someone that does, because I'm definitely that person and that nurse, but I think that it usually ends up with better outcomes than not.
Well, thanks for sharing all that. I appreciate hearing that. I mean, that's like a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
Being a new mom, having so much excitement around it, and then like realizing that that's just definitely not like a outcome that you want. Like,
oh my gosh, no. And it is such a rare
thing to happen.
One, for it to happen, and then just the getting this collage and doing all these things. Just, I mean, it's less than 2% of women are in like pregnancies, and usually it's something we see with people with multiples and stuff like that, when there's extra weight in there and stuff like that. So it's just not very, very common. And as much as actually a lot of things are becoming more common just with medical stuff. But yeah, so
what would you, now that we're starting to wrap up a little bit, what would you say is like, maybe 2 or 3 things of advice that you can share, like, for women about just being in labor, or getting ready for labor?
Yeah. What do
they bring in their bag?
Yeah, as much as I'm like getting myself ready, one, less is more. I mean, definitely, if you want all your stuff, bring all your stuff. Like, but sometimes it will make your room a little crowded. But also, we have a lot of stuff. So, go take that tour, see what we have for you. Most places have a birthing ball for you, if you really want your own. But most places have a birthing ball for you.
Bring their own balls?
People bring their, but a lot of times people don't realize that we have them for you.
Ladies,
yeah,
they're there.
We got them. Just again, ask what's available to you. Ask what we're gonna give you. Bring the things that are gonna make you comfortable, but also realize that this is an uncomfortable situation. And so, you can only prepare so much. There's gonna be something that you feel like you miss. It's like when you go on a trip. Like you're gonna feel like you missed something. You're gonna feel like, I should have brought that, or I forgot this. Personally, very curly hair. But I see this with a lot of moms' hair.
Braids.
Yeah. Or honestly, just hair ties.
Yeah.
Hair ties.
I mean, we've seen some nappy ass hair in the hospital.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
those bed sheets are not good.
Hair for you?
Yeah, but honestly, so many times I think everybody wants to like have their hair down for labor, and I just want to tell everybody to like just put it up in a bun, like. Because just do it and then let it down right after, or let it down. I'm like, you could tell me. I would tell you like, hey, baby is coming right now. Let's let it down, because if you want that moment of it looking, down and cute and good for the photos. But my thing is like, I feel so bad because I get people, baby, you've had a baby, you've been laying in bed for hours,
sweating.
days, and everything like that. And then you've had a baby and we're getting you up to go to the bathroom for this first time. And I see you turn around and I'm like, ooh, and I just see a mat and I'm like, oh, and I feel so bad. And I feel so bad. But yeah, so hair ties, that's for sure a thing. Long phone charger. I've seen that's a thing that's going around social media. Agreed. A long phone charger, because the outlets are super far away. I won't lie about that. They're very far away. And bring a phone charger, because so often they're like, do you guys have a phone charger? And depending on the hospital, we don't always have a phone charger that we can lend you. I'm an overpacker by far. But I'm trying to not like overpack everything. I'm trying to be like, okay, what do I need? I need one outfit. I need one going home outfit. I don't need 3. I don't need all of it. I need, I always say a pair of slip-on shoes. Like, come to the hospital usually with slip-on shoes. Don't come with like tennies and everything like that, because the reality is if you want to use them or anything like that, you're probably not going to lace them up.
Right.
Crocs are a great one. Crocs seem to be good because they're wipeable. Don't bring your fancy shoes either. I've seen that happen, and they stayed under the bed, and fluids came under, and yeah, I try to catch them on time, but I am always like, Crocs are great for that.
Like the Versace slippers or something,
exactly.
With amniotic fluid.
A lot of Uggs that have been splashed on and stuff like that. But again, we have all this stuff, but talk to your doctors, do the walkthrough, see what you need and everything like that. And
I mean,
what's going to make you
comfortable. I feel like that's been like the main thing that you've been saying. And
yeah, ask questions and stuff like that. Don't assume ever, ask questions. Ask your doctor, like, hey, what do you think this process is going to look like for me? Hey, like, you can ask them and be like, hey, what are those things you're concerned about for me? Is this something, we're thinking, or what are my chances? Or do we think I'm going to be an induction? And you can ask that from pretty early on. I'm not talking about earlier than 20 weeks, probably at the 28-week mark and stuff like that. But we might have those answers for you. If you have gestational diabetes, yeah, you are probably going to be induced at 39 weeks. Something we catch later, but cholestasis, hey, yeah, we're going to induce you at 37 weeks for that. Hypertension, if you're having any type of high blood pressures and stuff like that.
Like preeclampsia.
But some people, just have the high blood pressure, and some people the preeclampsia. Yeah, you're going to be, you know what I mean? And if those are things we already know sooner, just having the idea that that's going to happen might help you prepare for that experience rather than a different type of experience and stuff like that.
Well, I feel like this information is definitely like so good for women to know and to hear coming from someone that's, seen it firsthand. And then also someone who's pregnant. I feel like you've done a really good job at like navigating this bumpy road.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I've been like, there's only so much I can plan for. There's only so much I can think, you've really kept,
like, outside of this, you've kept such like a calm idea around it, and it's
I think fortunately I work in it, and fortunately I've experienced it through other women so many times, and I've experienced the opposite of so many people being disappointed, I think,
and the worry doesn't help. So it's like it's out of your control. So like do what you can to control things, and then just roll with the punches. If I mean, it's so much easier said than done. But
yeah, exactly. I think exactly. And I always joke. We always joke, I would say, as labor and delivery nurses, that we always joke that we always see the C-section or the this or like the outcomes that we didn't want to the person that was trying to hold on to the most control.
Yeah.
And maybe it just feels that way to us sometimes because, the person trying to hold on to the most control, when those things do happen, it doesn't feel as natural and there's a lot of fight to it. But, the more you can go into it with, hey, this is going to go as well as, it's going to go, and everybody just here wants the best for me and the best for my baby. And, hopefully, we would love, again, everything to happen for you, but we really, that's our goal is, besides for you to have what you have, is for you and baby to both be safe and come out safe and everything like that. But yeah, no, I think those are like...
Well, I hope you have as good as nurse as you are, because I feel like the women that you help are lucky. Are lucky to have you.
I appreciate you saying that.
I know. I've known you through this whole process, so it's just... It's beautiful to see.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for sharing your time and your expertise in easing the fears of women having babies and who want to have babies. And it's been a pleasure having you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. It's been
a
great time being here. I love you too. It's been a great time.
That just made me tear up a little.
Oh, don't tear up.
I didn't cry the whole time.
Keeping your own heart safe and warm. You're never really alone. You're never really